Thank you very much, Kristen. I really appreciate the opportunity to be here today and to be in the Rancho Palos Verdes Peninsula, which I had never been to before. And I actually came up a little bit early because of the traffic situation coming from San Diego and got to play golf over at the Donald's course. I didn't run into the Donald, but I'm sure if I had, I would have told him what a magnificent golf course that is. As Kristen said, I'm from Chicago. I was president of the Cook County Republican Party, and there is a Republican Party in Cook County. I will tell you, by the way, that Cook County is the second largest county in the country. We're actually sitting in the number one. Los Angeles County is the largest. We are in Los Angeles County, correct?
Yes.
And, you know, we probably had 2 million Republicans in Cook County. The only trouble was we had 3.5 million Democrats, so we were pretty outnumbered. I always said it was like being the opposition leader to Saddam. As Kristen said, I have 4 lovely daughters. I'm looking for single men, by the way. Don't take that the wrong way. They're all single. I always say that they're trying to find someone like their dad. You know, they just can't do it, so I don't think they're single. But, you know, actually, I have 4 daughters, a wife, and a female dog, and 2 female chickens. No males at all allowed in my household. Yeah, actually, yesterday was a real nice day because yesterday I celebrated the birthday of 2 of my daughters. Yes, believe it or not, I have 2 daughters born on February 25th, 5 years apart. It's the accountant in me. I actually like to read to my daughters, and it's kind of indicative of this story is kind of indicative of why I'm involved in politics to some degree. I'm a businessman first and foremost, but I have tilted at the windmills of politics to an occasion. And when my girls were younger, I used to read to them at night. And one time I was reading to my daughter Stephanie, who is the most precocious. She's the middle child. She is the definitive middle child. And as am I, by the way, you can tell. And she looked up at me in these doleful eyes. She was about 6 years old. She said, "Daddy, do all fairy tales begin with once upon a time?" And I thought for a moment, the women will appreciate this. No, sweetheart. No, there's a whole series of fairy tales. They begin with, "If elected, I promise." Well, you got a little bit of a problem here in California. I moved here in 2008, by the way. You know, there's an old expression in golf. Is there any golfers here? Every shot makes somebody happy. Have you heard this? And so when the real estate crash happened, guess what? Your houses went down in value. I bought. Thank you very much. But that's what you do. That's what free markets are like, right? Price goes down and you buy. I'm very happy to be in California. My friends tell me that I moved from Illinois. I moved to the only state in the country that makes Illinois look well managed. And it's true. It's true. Just this week, as a matter of fact, I'll give you a little bit of a number. For the 3rd year in a row, you achieved something significant. And that is, California is 50 out of 50. As if I needed to tell you that, right? The worst run states in the country, okay, Illinois is 49, California is 50. I'll give you another piece of information. I'll give you another number to think about. There's 2 million public sector employees in California. Now, grant you, I have absolutely nothing against public sector employees. As Kristen informed you, my mother was a Chicago public school teacher. My mother was a union member. She would walk picket lines in the 60s. My mother was a little bit to the left of Ted Kennedy. She wondered where her conservative son came from. She told me that many times. But it's born of her experience that I became active. And why? Because she would come home from a hard day's work, putting up with the principals in the Chicago public school system, putting up with the bureaucracy that was that school system. And she taught at an inner city high school that she went to she was a kid. It obviously had changed in complexion, obviously, in the intervening years, but it also had changed in terms of its quality, tremendously changed. I don't know if you know this or not, but in Chicago, it still happens, principals are chosen based upon their political influence. They're not chosen based upon their abilities. And I've got to tell you, if you want to have a good school, you better have a good principal. It's like a football coach. You can have some real good players, but if you have a lousy coach, you're not going to have a good team. All you suffering San Diego Chargers fans and other people like that out there will know that. There's 2 million public sector workers in California. They pay about $1,000 a year in dues. Add up the numbers. You're talking $2 billion a year. That's not just one time, ladies and gentlemen, for all you accountants out there. That's every single year that they have to spend. And of course, they're not dummies. What do they spend it on? I mean, if I were a union boss, I'd do exactly what they do. I'd spend it on political campaigns. And why? Because, let's face it, they work for the taxpayers, but really and truly they work for the legislature, right? They work for the people that we elect. And of course, they're all too happy to help them with their campaigns, aren't they? And that's the problem. And it's not just the unions, believe me, I'm not here to bash unions. As I said, my mother and my stepfather were both members of government employees' unions. I think they're wonderful as collective bargaining agents, but they shouldn't be funding the campaigns. Now, what have we tried to do? And by the way, at the same time, the trial lawyers shouldn't be funding campaigns. The Indian casinos shouldn't be funding campaigns. The big businesses that want to regulate their competitors out of business, right? They shouldn't be funding campaigns. So it's not just the unions, it's all of them. And it's called pay to play. It's called legalized bribery. It's called corruption. Now we've tried to deal with it, right? And you'll hear this from politicians all the time. We need to have better transparency. We need to have better disclosure. We need to limit the amounts that we can contribute. That was what McCain-Feingold was supposedly going to do, was herald this whole new day when we wouldn't have to worry about pay-to-play and politicians doing what the funders want. But you know what? None of it works. And you know why? Because they still need the money. And just like water, which seeks its own level, money will find a way into a campaign that needs it. So what do you do about it? I'm here to tell you, we, and I say we, not just me, but a lot of people that I've worked with and a committee of down in Rancho Santa Fe, basically people I play golf with, but really smart people. And we came up with a solution. And it's the neighborhood legislature. It's what you have in front of you. What does it do? It's a very, very simple change to the California Constitution. And by the way, you can do this in California. I couldn't do this in Illinois, by the way. You can only change the Constitution in Illinois with a constitutional convention, which every conservative and every person you talk to would be scared to death of. Why? Because the same people who control the legislature would control a constitutional convention, right? So you'd get a worse situation than you have before. But you can change the Constitution. You just have to collect enough signatures, 807,000. And that's what we have right before you today. We have an initiative, a ballot initiative, that will change the Constitution. Right now, your California Constitution says 40 senators and 80 assemblymen, right? You all read it? You all memorized it, right? We make one tiny little change. We take out the 40 and 80 and we say, no district shall be bigger than 5,000 people for an assembly district and 10,000 people in a Senate district. A tiny, tiny, tiny campaign. Where did I get this idea? Well, Kristen alluded to it. I spent a lot of time in New Hampshire. Why? Because I was upset about George Bush. George Bush spent money we didn't have, put us in more debt than anybody except the current occupants, who I know very well from Chicago, and sad to say, and expanded government. So I went out to New Hampshire, and I talked to a whole bunch of groups. I was at town hall meetings talking about what I would do, and I watched these town hall meetings. where there are people that would get up. Larry, you know, Amelia, you're from Massachusetts, you know New Hampshire situation. New Hampshire has only 1 million people in it. But they have 400 members in their House of Representatives. Anybody know that? Do the math. The joke in New Hampshire is that if you aren't a state representative, you're some member of your family was. Because every state representative there represents only a few thousand people. And guess what? Nobody spends any money to run for office. Guess what? In those districts that are that tiny, they go door to door. They actually meet their constituents. What a strange, strange thing. We did focus groups of people in San Diego. We brought in 20 voters who were high-propensity voters. Every single time they voted. Did you know that all 20, not one of the 20, could even name their state assemblyman or their state senator? Forget about having met them or shaken their hand. They didn't even know the name of their state senator or state assemblyman. They're detached. And why? Because California has the largest legislative districts in the world. You do have that distinction. Not the country, the world. 500,000 people in an assembly district, 1 million in a state senate district. When you have to run in a district that large, guess what you need a lot of? Money. And you need people. And guess what? The unions, the trial lawyers, the big businesses, all the people that want something out of government, guess what they're going to do? They're going to give you all that stuff in exchange for something. And guess who pays for it? Us. The neighborhood legislature reduces district sizes down to 5,000 and 10,000. Now, I can hear the wheels turning in all your collective heads right now. Doesn't that create thousands of legislators? Yeah. It basically multiplies it by 100 because it creates 8,000 assemblymen and 4,000 senators. And if you're like John and Ken, anybody ever hear John and Ken on the radio? I was on with them. Talk about walking into the lion's den. What? You're going to create 12,000 of these guys? I don't like the 120 that we have there now, and you're going to multiply it by 100? Go to our website, neighborhoodlegislature.com, click on media, and you'll hear the whole interview. By the end of the interview, they said, wow, that's the greatest idea we've ever heard. I'm serious. What this does, we don't send 12,000 people to Sacramento. Rest assured. Effectively what happens is these huge districts are subdivided by 100. So there'll be 100 tiny little neighborhood districts that are going to elect a neighborhood assemblyman in an assembly district or a neighborhood senator in a senate district. The 100 get elected by going door to door and talking to their neighbors, right? After the election, the 100 get together in a caucus just like this. I don't know, there's probably not 100 here, but there's, we'll get 100 people together like this, and they have an election. And they select one member to go to Sacramento, called a working committee. So every assembly district sends one member, every senate district sends one member. Do the math. You still get 40 senators and 80 assemblymen who go to Sacramento. They're called a working committee. So essentially, the 100 people who are the legislatures, those are the legislators, they delegate their rule-making authority to a committee that goes to Sacramento. That's important, by the way, because they retain the power of the vote. The 99 people who stayed home, they get a vote on every piece of legislation that's produced by the working committee. So nobody can complain that they voted for somebody who didn't get a vote on legislation. Every constituent in California will have a vote for a neighborhood legislator who will get a vote on all pieces of legislation. And believe it or not, they'll actually know what's in that legislation. You know that legislators, most of the legislators in Sacramento, just like in Springfield, Illinois, you know what they're called? They're called mushrooms. Did you know that? Does anybody know how that term came about? They stay in the dark and you throw manure on them. I could say something else, but we're a mixed company. But your legislator will know what's in that legislation. Why? Because his working committee member that he sent there will be communicating with the 99 on a regular basis, by internet, by email, by all the modern technology that we have. So that working committee guy will be, if he's smart, and he wants to keep getting sent to Sacramento to be part of the whole working committee, he's going to keep in touch with the 99 people back in the district and let them know what's going to be coming down the pipe in terms of a bill to be voted on. And isn't that great? Isn't that really getting the pulse of the people? That's what we ought to be doing. And guess what? None of them needs to raise money. None of them needs to campaign. Anybody here run for the Assembly or the Senate? You're kind of a weird group because you're actually politically involved. Most normal people out there are doing their own thing and they don't get politically involved. You guys do. And when I say you're not normal, I say that with all due respect and love. Because I'm one of you. I can't stand what's going on and I try to get involved and change things. And I applaud all of you who do that, by the way, in a note of seriousness. Anybody run for the Assembly or the Senate? Think about it. You'd have to have your head examined to even do it right now, wouldn't you? I mean, you're going to give up your entire life. Forget about playing golf. Forget about seeing your children or being involved in your church, your family. You're going to be campaigning nonstop in these huge districts. You're going to be begging for money from every Tom, Dick, and Harry. I mean, when I ran for the U.S. Senate, by the way, in Illinois. I debated the arrogant one 3 times. So I know him very well. He calls me Brother Cox. Needless to say, I haven't seen him for a few years. But, you know, I ran. I started looking at people like they had dollar signs on their forehead. Because that's what you have to do when you're running for office in these huge districts. And of course, I ran for the U.S. Senate. Illinois is a pretty big state. Not as big as yours, but it's pretty big. And I had to raise money from everybody I could see. And guess what? Most people, most sane people, most qualified people, the people that we want to serve, frankly, won't do that. The neighborhood legislature, I think, will bring people. You know what? And I saw it in New Hampshire. Who ran in New Hampshire? Well, first of all, retired executives, retired business people. What's wrong with retirees? They have white hair like me. They have experience. They won't be sold a bill of goods by some lobbyist. They actually have been around the park and know what's going on, right? Isn't that a good thing? For all of us with gray, white hair, we know that we're perceived as having some wisdom. Who else runs in New Hampshire? Women who have left the workforce to raise children. That's still a wonderful thing to do, but they're lawyers and they're accountants and they want to stay involved, and so they have kids at home and they get tired of changing diapers and they want to be involved in the legislative process. That's wonderful. Who else? Small business people, college students. They can run. And we'd love to have college students run. Wouldn't that be great? I'd love to have Joe on our legislature. Be a far sight better than 99.9% of them that are there. That's who will run for a neighborhood legislature. It won't be a bunch of dummies. It'll be people who care about their community, people who will have to show their neighbors when they go door to door that they actually know what they're talking about. They can walk and chew gum at the same time. And that's what we should have making our policy, isn't it? So I'm here today to implore you. We have about 500 people out collecting signatures right now. We need 5,000. I've spent about 500,000 of my children's inheritance doing this. Don't worry, they'll have enough. But I'm not a billionaire, so I don't have the $3 million to go out and buy paid signature gatherers. I'll tell you that right now. So I've been out speaking to groups like this. I've been speaking to Rotary clubs, chambers of commerce, realtor groups. I'm a realtor. And people are interested, but we haven't gotten them to really get involved yet. We got 500 out of about 10,000 on our list. I'll be honest with you. So we're working on a couple of things that we may be able to announce real soon, but we need your help. The structure of our government is our fault. You can blame all you want on politicians, but you know what? At the end of the day, if we put up with this structure, it's our fault, not theirs. We can change it. I'm lighting a match with this idea, and hopefully it turns into a forest fire because you guys, and I know that's a sensitive analogy to use in the state, I apologize. But we have to really get people going. And so if you've got email lists, if you've got connections, if you've got groups that you're involved in, let them know about this idea. This idea has the potential to really change. Forget about term limits. Forget about top two and redistricting. Those were decent reforms, but you know they didn't have much of an effect, did they? They didn't. This will take the funders out of power. This, we say, will be the greatest transfer of power since 1776. Because they'll transfer power from the funders to the people. And let me tell you, it's long overdue in California, and frankly, it's long overdue in Washington, D.C. Thank you for the opportunity to be here. I'll be happy to take questions.
Susan.
Yes, I didn't run for a state office, but I did run for Congress, so I do know what you're talking about.
Well, that's a tiny district. That's only 700,000.
Anyway, I did want to ask you, what can we do? Is there a petition that you want us to sign, anything signature?
Joe, did you miss this lady here? What happened to you? I mean, Joe was handing them out. So does everybody have a petition?
We're all fanatics.
They're on the tables. They're on the tables.
No, that's fine.
And we can get you. You can go to our website. You can download a single petition if you want. This one has 12 signatures on it. You also have to get the instructions, by the way, because the instructions are very detailed. The legislature has made this almost as bad as the IRS, and I'm used to dealing with the IRS. So you got to make sure that every name on the petition is from one county. You can't have San Diego County and Los Angeles County on the same petition page. God forbid anybody would have to go and look at two different county registers in order to take this, you know. So there's a lot of rules. So please download the instructions. Everything's on the website. We even have instructions on how to go door to door and be a candidate. The website is very, very good. You have a question, sir?
Yes, John. I think I know the answer to this question, but I'd like to hear you either confirm or elucidate. When the working committee is established in Sacramento, it will be made up of the votes of each sub-district. The percentage in that district is likely, at least initially, to be the same percentage of voters that is now. So how is the ratio in Sacramento going to change from the supermajority they have now to your plan? By the way,
Good question.
I'm from Oak Park and lived in Glen Ellen, where my next door
I lived in
parents of Bill Ayers.
Oh, okay. Oh, you know Tom Ayers. Tom Ayers was the head of Commonwealth Edison, if you remember. Commonwealth Edison. Okay, let me make this clear. First of all, the working committee, remember, is one person who's elected by the 100 from each big district. Does everybody understand that? So the big district that you're sitting in right now, we're sitting in a big assembly district, and we're sitting in a big Senate district. I'm assuming because of you that they're both Republicans, right? Oh, gee, okay. Sorry.
Working on it.
You're working on it.
Yeah, good answer.
But, yeah, good answer. So each of those districts then is divided into 100 little tiny ones, and then they elect their regular representative in November, and it goes to the top two and everything else like that. And the working committee, remember I said, there are 40 senators then and 80 assemblymen. There's one from each district that go to Sacramento. They go ahead and make the law, right? They hold hearings, they meet with lobbyists, and they draft the law. It goes back to the 99. It goes back to all 12,000 who get a vote, right? And it has to pass a majority of them before it goes to the governor. So that's the exact procedure. Now your question, sir, was, well, aren't we going to end up with the same supermajority that we have now? Well, maybe, unless we do a better job. But let me just say, first of all, and I got this question from a new majority guy who I think worked for a major real estate developer in Orange County, and I won't mention his name. But, you know, he said, well, I don't want any idea that's going to result in more, you know, in one more Democrat going to Sacramento. And I said, well, okay. This may be a blue state, it may be Democrat, I don't know. I'm not really going to concede that, by the way. Because I think there's a lot of people who have tuned out of the system. Don't you think that? There's a lot of people who feel that their vote doesn't count, and therefore they don't participate. Well, that's one of my answers to you, sir, and that is, I believe those people who believe now that their vote doesn't count will become awakened by this system. Because if you're in a district of only 5,000 people, think about it. That's only 3,000 registered voters roughly right now. You got kids, right? So 5,000 people includes kids or illegals or people who aren't eligible to vote. If you're in an election with 3,000 people, guess what? Every vote's going to count. So I think a lot more people will participate, a lot more people will turn out, a lot more people will register. I believe most people in this country don't want to have their noses or other parts wiped by government every day. I believe most people in this country believe in individual responsibility, free markets, limited government. I believe if we have a chance to communicate that message door to door, and not with the onslaught, not have to do campaigns with TV, 30-second ads, right? If we can have those conversations on people's doorsteps, I don't care if they're Latino, I don't care if they're Asian, I don't care who they are, they came to this country to escape an oppressive and corrupt government, didn't they? For the most part. And they didn't come here to be wet-nosed by the government. They came here for the opportunity of being an American. And I really believe that. I believe most people came here for the freedom and liberty that I enjoy. If we get a chance to communicate that message door to door, I think we win. And that's why I think we wouldn't have a supermajority. The reason there's a supermajority right now is because campaigns are all about how many 30-second TV ads you have, and how many workers you flood into a district who pull out one party and not the other, right? In this system, the Republican Party is going to have to change. The consultants aren't going to get rich. I mean, I wrote a $100,000 check to Prop 32, and guess what? The consultants spent it on TV. And Prop 32 failed because there was no ground game. The neighborhood legislature is all about the ground game. It's all about talking to voters, communicating on their doorstep or their electronic doorstep, which is the social media, right? It's all about one-on-one communication. Yes, sir.
Are these 99 people salaried by the state, or are they citizen volunteers?
They're essentially volunteers. We put a $1,000 stipend for them. That's essentially a volunteer. I mean, that basically reimburses them for any amount they would ever spend on a campaign. But you know, remember, they don't have to campaign much, because once you've walked your district and gotten all of your constituents' emails, do you have to walk it again? Probably not. You probably can just communicate with them by email. And because they know you, they won't put you in spam, presumably, and they'll communicate with you. You'll be able to touch them electronically, so you won't have to campaign again. And you won't have to use a lot of money. The people that go to the working committee, we originally set it at 30,000, but we changed it to 50,000. We got some pushback from some liberal groups who said, you know, 30,000 isn't enough to live on, 50,000 in California. You know, there's a reason California is so expensive, right? You have the highest taxes, the highest energy rates, the highest utility costs, the highest sales taxes, and you get the best services, right? You know, I was a Florida resident before I was in California. Yeah, I know, that's stupid, right? I moved to California. Well, I'm in the real estate business, so I get depreciation. It took me 15 minutes to get my driver's license from Illinois when I moved from Illinois to Florida. You know how long it took me at the DMV? And I had an appointment. Welcome to California. It took me 5 hours at the DMV with an appointment. It took me 15 minutes in Florida. Any other questions? Yes.
So the title neighborhood. I'm a native Angelino, and we have neighborhood councils as a part of the city of Los Angeles, and support groups in each council person. And there are 15. So they are an advisory committee.
Right.
How well do you know anything about them?
Oh, totally. We actually had a guy, Scott Crawford, I don't know if you know him, but he was a council member, he was working for our campaign. You know, we tried to get a lot of the neighborhood councils in LA interested in it, but they had their bureaucracies, and, you know, we got some who are in it and who are interested, but you're right. There's 1,800 people there who serve for no money and have no power. I mean, they don't get to vote on anything, they're just advisory. Each of these 99 people, remember, gets a vote on every piece of legislation. They are a legislator. There's no difference there, so that's power. I think there'll be a lot of people who will want to take these positions.
When do you need the signatures back?
Good question. We need the signatures by May 20th. So it's a big mountain to climb, unless you're going to pay signature gatherers. And I wish I had money. Everybody know any billionaires? You know, California has no shortage of billionaires. And I kind of believe if any of them knew about this idea, I don't know. I just moved here. And if people could get to know this idea, I think a lot of these guys, how many liberals have you heard scream about how bad they feel about Citizens United?
Yeah.
They want to impeach the Supreme Court because of Citizens United. Well, you know, I'm not going to go into Citizens United. That could be another hour conversation, and I'm not going to have that much time. But this is better. This takes away the power of the super PACs. This takes away the power of Sheldon Adelson and George Soros. They can still spend money. You know, that's what, by the way, that happens in New Hampshire. People try to spend money to get one of those seats in New Hampshire. Do you know what happens? They lose. I mean, if you spend $20,000 to try to win a position with 3,000 voters, people look at you like, are you nuts? What are you doing? Joe here walked and knocked on my door and said hello to me. You're sending me 10 mailers telling me what kind of a great guy you are. I'm voting for Joe. I think he's honest and sincere. You're trying to buy the seat. It rebounds against them. There's a retaliation. So they can spend all the money they want, but the money will be useless. It'll be issues, it'll be policy, it'll be character that will elect our neighborhood legislature. Any other questions? I've exhausted you. I thank you. I thank you in advance for spreading the word as much as you can, and I very much appreciate the opportunity to come up here and play ball. Thank you.